Welcome to the Coast to Coast podcast, brought to you by Play Picks and the Lines, coming to you from the West Coast. Josh Lander, joined by my guy Nate Weitzer on the East Coast. And we only have one game to talk about here on this Friday night slate of playoff basketball, Nate, as the Warriors took care of business in Game 5 there against the Nuggets, closed them out. So they are not going to be playing anymore in that series. But we do need to close out this Memphis and Minnesota series at some point. It is 3-2 Memphis here. So we're going to take a look at some of the best bets we like and a few player props, I'm sure, as well as they come up for us. Make sure you are liked and subscribed to that page. We're going to continue to bring you each and every single playoff game with a video about each game, and then those player props videos when we have enough games on the slate there to get you some good prop options. Make sure you are headed to thelines.com as well to check out our props tool and odds checker. Make sure you are shopping the lines, get the best juice out there from odds makers. And as always, if you do still need a FanDuel or DraftKings account, head to ftpicks.com or dkpicks.com. Find those listings in your area. Nate, before we even jump into this, I keep forgetting to tell people that they should go to playpicks.com as well, as you are writing your ass off. So I want to make sure that people know there's plenty of good articles on thelines.com and playpicks.com from Nate and team. So make sure you are checking those out. And now, please, Nate, the line that we have for tonight.
Appreciate it. Yeah, we keep you updated with daily MLB and NBA picks on that site. Yeah, Friday, we have the Grizz now -1.5 at Minnesota. Interestingly, the market seems to have caught up to these unders that we've been targeting in the series. It dropped to 228, but people are still betting the over. It's at 229, might be 230 by the time you get to it. So just something to watch there. And we do have our first second round series up. We will get you a video up for that soon. Celtics are -5 at home, Game 1 against Milwaukee, and that total only 218 as the Celtics defense looks to be lights out, continue its run. But we are talking Western Conference here, trying to find an opponent for those Warriors. Can Memphis close it out in Minnesota tonight? I think the first inclination is to just say expect the unexpected in this series and expect a back and forth affair. And you can actually bet that by going to the wire-to-wire option and saying neither team will lead wire-to-wire at -145. Not the greatest odds, but I mean, it seems like a highly likely scenario the way this series has unfolded, with Minnesota starting hot, taking massive leads, blowing them, starting third quarters really strong, as they've done most of the season as well. They're a young team that comes out hot, and Memphis has been, struggled to find some consistency on offense because their perimeter game lacks so much. They still won. They still won a couple games despite having no perimeter offense by dominating down low. They went 7 for 28 from three in Game 5, but shot 39 free throws, had a 53-42 rebounding advantage, 18 offensive rebounds. And Brandon Clark, the engine behind that, 21 and 15 over 37 minutes. I wonder if we'll finally get some props up to bet on him. Right. It's just that they took everyone else off the board because they knew Brandon Clark was coming off the bench to play big minutes. Yeah. The craziest thing about this game is that its pace was up at near 107, and it still went under. We talked about the correlation where Memphis wins, the pace is at 99. In Wolves wins, the pace was at 103. This one fell somewhat in the middle in terms of the Wolves' offensive efficiency, but turnovers all over the place led us to a low-scoring affair. As good as Cat has been, if you're just following the points, these last couple games, he has 61 points. He has 13 turnovers, 5 in the second half of that last game. And, people breaking it down, showing that he's really just not reading double teams. He's getting baited into these turnovers. It's just, there's youth all over the floor for both these teams, so much inexperience. And sometimes that results in defensive lapses and easy points. Sometimes it just results in bad possessions and turnovers and not exploiting the right matchup. But I lean Memphis to close this out because, the second half numbers are so stark in their favor, especially in the fourth quarter now. Yeah. A 32 net rating. Out rebounding the Wolves by 62% to 38% in the fourth quarter, which is not a fluke. Minnesota was the fourth worst defensive rebounding team this season. Minnesota now has the worst assist to turnover ratio over the last 4 games in these playoffs, and somehow outdoing the Sixers in that department. And they're giving up 17 points per game on second chance points, not really getting anything of their sort. John Morant, like I said, was sandbagging a little bit, saying he couldn't explode, get to the rim. 19 points in the fourth quarter, including an explosive drive to win it and the dunk of the playoffs thus far, burying Malik Beasley off the depth chart. But he's not the guy we're trying to target here with props. I think Desmond Bane is the barometer for how the Grizzlies go. Dylan Brooks has been wildly inconsistent. He went 3 for 18 from the field in the last game, and that's probably a big reason, if you bet the under, why he came through. He did go, had a much better shooting game in Minnesota last time out. He has a strong correlation between good offense, bad defense, and these games going over.
Yeah.
But he's a gamer, so I would expect him to come out, play well in this closeout situation, keep us under 230 if that's where you can find it. But it's Bane who the Grizzlies need on offense to exploit this bad three-point defense. He's averaging 28 points per game, shooting 51% from three in the last 3 in the series. And for him to just get 20 in a win, plus 180, his prop at 21.5 points, I think that's a great way to juke this money line a little bit because the Grizz, they're going to need him for sure in this matchup.
Without question. Man, I mean, you kind of just said everything there is to say about this series. I love that minus 144 bet for this not to lead wire to wire. I don't think it's a live bet either, right? Like there's not an odd, it doesn't stay up with the odds, obviously. So it sucks because I kind of feel like if you could live bet this scenario, it would be sick because it's going to be like 20-9 for sure or whatever to start this game. And then the other team will come back and be up by 8 before you can blink an eye. And so I would love to have this live opportunity to have those odds get better. But either way, it's a -1, spread here. So it's basically a pick 'em, which means that it's very likely to happen. So minus 144 still doesn't seem that bad, to be honest, considering it's super, super likely. But yeah, it's just a fun stat or a fun prop to talk about because of the fact that this series is just so insanely back and forth and just crazy numbers in terms of lead changes and all the rest. And it does come down to consistency. I think at this point, it's also coming down to a bit of, I want to say, fatigue to a degree. I mean, there's not any experience for a guy like Ant Edwards or even most of Memphis, despite playing, the 5 playoff games they played last year. There's not that much experience of going deep into playoffs, knowing how to conserve your energy, not play at 108 pace in game 6 of the first round of the NBA playoffs. Like, you would never see a team with LeBron James playing at a pace like that in the first round of the series. Not a LeBron James team that learned from playing in the finals against the Spurs, super young, et cetera, right? Like you learn how to do that, essentially, is my point. The Dubs are a great example of that. They have had their own turnover issues as well. It was a really gross game, closeout game for them, but it really came down to, obviously they have Steph Curry and he kind of just took over, but it also came down to them not turning the ball over to the extent that Memphis has. But the things to like about Memphis is, like you said, it seems like the Timberwolves have to play outside themselves, and their fluctuation is just so out of control right now in terms of, you look at quarter by quarter the net rating for this team. We did it in a recent game where it was just like plus 72, minus 58, plus 38, minus 12. And it's every other quarter. And they just can't keep that level of consistency, which is sort of highlighted and illustrated in the way that you look at Cat's game log throughout the playoffs. I mean, he has 2 stinkers in there and then 3 really good games in this series so far. And I think you continue to expect the good Cat. I do kind of feel as though 2 in a row now, he is back at home. I think he got the first game jitters at home. Was it the last time he played really poorly in that 15 points that he scored in that game 3 when they got back to Minnesota. Or, I'm sorry, 8 points when they got back to Minnesota. And I think he got that out of his system, to be honest, because that's not the player that he is. And coming back at this point, you see how he's being defended by Dylan Brooks for the majority of game 5 there. And so you really need him to take that good advantage of that, which he did to a degree. Also can't stay out of foul trouble. I don't know who wins the can't stay out of foul trouble award more between he and Triple J, but it's very close at this point. Triple J also did hit those 2 threes for you that we called, by the way, as he's kind of seems to at least found his shot a bit. So I would also say, the only other thing I would talk about here is Memphis's defense. It's for real. It's been for real. And when they, the only thing that I would say they found that they figured out as well in game 5 is Brandon Clark can't really guard Karl-Anthony Towns. That's been obvious at this point when he's guarding Cat. Cat is shooting, I believe, 89% from the field in the last 2 games in the minutes that Clark is on him. He can do everything else. You need Brandon Clark out there. I mean, he's now played the second most amount of minutes in the last 3 games since they figured something out with him and Desmond Bane, who's also kept his shot attempts now above 17 in the last 3 games, to the point that you've made of averaging 28 in that time frame. He's still not getting the correct props, I don't think, at 21.5 points. And it's still only minus 110 there for those. So I don't know why you wouldn't like that. He's done that in every single game now. And yeah, I think he's going to continue to pull at the rate of 12 to 15 3-point attempts, as he's the only guy making threes. Dillon Brooks is now shooting about 26% from deep. And like you said, it's really about Dillon Brooks' defense. And I think those, as you've seen his field goal attempts drop, you've seen that his energy be conserved for defense, which has led him to lower his individual defensive rating. He's actually, like I said, guarded Cat the most amount of minutes in the last game, obviously with a forward playing behind him to come up and help. But I think between him guarding he and Edwards as well, spent a lot of time on him in the last couple of games, just sort of switching between those two, which shows his sort of switchability. He's going between guarding Cat and guarding Ant, and doing a pretty good job of it, like I said, with that good individual defensive rating. I think it is another under opportunity at this point. I do think this is like a 225 line, to be honest, is where I might set it, closer to 225, 226. So if you are still looking at it at 229 and does get up to about 230, like Nate said, I prefer it, just because, I do think that there's something to be said for Memphis bringing their defense on the road as well. It's not my preferred bet. I also think that if you think that the norm is Memphis playing good defense and shutting down Minnesota more often than not in these games, even though they haven't, they come out to these super slow starts and it really shoots them in the foot. They just avoid that, which seems like they should be able to, and that's likely to happen. We know that they dominate down the stretch.
Right. So that's the way to live bet it. If you say, how do I bet this wire to wire? It's like you let Memphis could potentially get down early and then you hit their money line, or you get them to cover if they're then underdogs. But I think that trend might buck eventually. I mean, we might just see a bit more fluctuation. Memphis, obviously, that has to be a point of emphasis for them. Let's not get off to this bad start. We've lucked out in a couple of these wins, particularly 2 of them coming back from huge deficits late. At the same time, they have so much margin for error, because in the fourth quarter, with Minnesota posting a 90 offensive rating, with their 2 best players being complete playoff neophytes in Cat and Anthony Edwards, they're just getting into so mumuch trouble. In Memphis, they're young and experienced too, but they're confidently brash, right? I mean, they just, their style of game is not. There's not as much nuance to their style of game. Let's just put it that way. John Morant, split the double team, go up, find somebody, or just dunk all over somebody. And so I still have seen them make some terrible decisions down the stretch, like Ja trying to throw an alley-oop when they're running down the clock in the final minute. I think that there's also an opportunity to live bet the under then, if you're counting on that, counting on these teams failing to execute. It's kind of the anti-Suns Pelicans series that we're talking about, where we're all about live betting it in the fourth quarter to get the over, because Chris Paul and CJ McCollum are probably not going to get their teams empty possessions in that kind of slow down half court playoff game. And these 2 teams, they're completely uncomfortable playing that way. You saw it with them both accepting that pace last time out. Yet we still went under because nobody could execute, and because of that kind of willy-nilly style that I'm talking about, where you just throw the ball away. Not going to result in points. Could result in points the other way, but down the stretch, it did not. Again, yeah, I think Memphis can get this done here on the road. But I think the under is still in play, considering Minnesota's, over the course of the entire season, a little bit better defensively at home, and not as good offensively. Yeah. And Memphis's defense will travel the way they guard the paint.
Precisely. Yeah, I would agree with all that. And once again, game theory would tell us then that you prefer an under if you think Memphis is going to win this game. They can't afford to keep that up in terms of that 108 pace they played with in game 6 there, game 5. And I think they know that, especially in Minnesota. So that's where I would lean for this one, and still feel good about Desmond Bane as the only guy hitting threes right now. Even though Triple J did hit his 2, still, I think he's the bulk of the offense, like you said, outside of Ja, which is the starting point of the offense, like you said, is him breaking it down. And his assists in this one for Ja, 9.5 at plus 115. I think it's worth a sprinkle on that when you consider plus odds for him. And that's what he's been doing. I mean, he had 15 a couple games ago. I think I know he had 19 in the 4th. But I do think that a part of keeping him healthy and keeping this offense from just flying around and going too quickly is him moving the ball and trusting that he can cut and get it back and keep his shooters open. So that is all the time we have for you in this one. Make sure to like and subscribe to that page. Only got one video for you for this Friday night game, but we are coming back, as Nate said, with game 1 of round 2 in that very fun Celtics and Bucks series. So make sure you do check that one out as well. And until we see you next, happy betting.